They built 146 vacation cabins on land. My land, the one my wife and I poured 3 decades of our lives into. And when they were almost finished, I dropped the gates and let the mountain remind them who really owned this place. I can still picture the HOA president rolling up in her shiny SUV, flashing forged paperwork, and that smug little laugh, thinking she was queen of the valley as her crews bulldozed the same. Creek Eleanor and I fought to protect. She called to progress. But let's call it what it was. A straight-up land grab. You know what I mean? They brushed off my warnings, ripped up cease and desist letters, saw me as some oldemer. They could steamroll, except what they didn't know was under all that fresh concrete. This whole project was sitting on a loaded gun, and I was holding the trigger. The world's got its own rules. But out here, you don't win by playing the game. You win by remembering what the land can do. That's how I got everything back. And if you stick around, I'll tell you exactly how. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because this is one for the books. Most days I'm up before the sun, coffee in hand, leaning on the dam I built in '96, watching Rawlings Creek cut through the mist. That little dam, built with sweat legal permits, and the kind of stubbornness you earned. Surviving Vietnam kept the lights on, paid the bills, gave Eleanor and me a corner of peace in a world that never quite made sense after the war. She always said that creek was the heart of our land, and losing her 2 years back made the water's steady sound the only thing that kept me grounded. So when a letter arrived from Lakeview, HOA, I figured it was a mistake out. Here, we're 5 miles from the nearest pavement and my closest neighbors, a retired ranger with more bear stories than teeth. No HOA in sight. But then I opened the envelope formal as a government audit reeking of fresh toner, and saw a plat map covering every inch of my property diced into 146 tiny boxes. Common property, the letter called it, but there's no such thing here. There's my property and the government's, and nothing in between. I dug out the deed, the survey, the water rights, all ironclad, just as solid as a day judge. Miller signed them in '71, not a single gap, not a single loophole. So what the hell were they talking about? It all hinged on an easement, a right to cross my land, one I never signed. A trip to the county office turned my stomach upside down. A brand new easement on file, my signature scrolled at the bottom, except it wasn't my handwriting. And the notary was some stranger in a town I haven't set foot in since the '90s. I'll tell you, there's a special kind of cold that hits you when you realize someone's faked their way into your life. This wasn't a clerical mix-up. This was a con plan filed and locked into the system with a forged name to match. I barely remember the drive home, mind racing as I crested the ridge and saw a plain as day, a yellow excavator clawing up the slope, eating into land that hadn't been touched since the last big snow. They weren't waiting for permits or meetings. They'd already broken ground. I didn't bother yelling at the workers. They weren't the enemy. I went home, got out my old trail cameras, the military-grade ones with night vision, and by sundown I'd hidden 6 of them, up and down the line, watching every truck, every trespass, every grain of dirt moved. Next morning, I sent up my survey drone, quiet, accurate, loaded with mapping, software documenting every inch they scarred. Meanwhile, the paperwork just got weirder. Zoning maps didn't match. The land was listed rural agriculture, minimum 10 acres per house. No way you could stick 146 vacation cabins up there, unless you cooked the books. I called the zoning office, and some green clerk told me, oh, the variance was waived under an old HOA charter from 2002, except that charter, the Valley Ridge Preservation Society died in 2008. I pulled records, checked the secretary of state site dead entity. They were stacking new fraud on old ghosts. A little digging brought up a name Cynthia. Maris, former real estate agent, with a smile you could sharpen a knife on. Her specialty was quiet closings and flipping land out from under absentee owners. Every lawsuit she touched had the same stench, confusion, sudden construction, and a buyout offer for pennies once the owner was overwhelmed. It made my skin crawl. Just then, my neighbor dropped off a slick brochure from his mailbox. Lakeview Luxury. Cabins move and ready by summer complete. When aerial shot of my own damn ridge. Smiling families in cabins lined up like teeth. They were selling Eleanor's legacy before the paint had even dried. Here's where I started fighting back. First, the old flood protocol emergency. Plans for the dam signed off by the best hydrologist in the state. Those cabins planted smack in the middle of the emergency spillway. But I needed proof, not just old files. So I got soil samples, hired a lab called a geologist. Buddy, he called the ridge a historic slide zone, meaning when it rains, the whole thing turns to pudding and moves downhill. 3 days later, the lab confirmed it when soaked that dirt could liquefy in a bad storm. Now, you can fight with paper, you can fight with facts, but I decided to use both. I made 3D maps, overlaid the drone footage, mapped out every unstable slope, and brought it all to the county building. Inspector, the guy barely met my eyes. He just mumbled, "Permits are all approved. The HOA is handling safety." Now, yeah, right. I recorded everything. When the official complaint went nowhere, I started compiling every scrap of evidence, waiting for my break. The real twist came when Tyrell James, the foreman, showed up at my door, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "I shouldn't be here," he said, but handed me a stack of internal emails. Proof the HOA knew about the unstable soil, knew about my ownership, and was planning to fence me in if I complained, all while instructing their team to just keep building no matter what. That was it, with my lawyer friend Jim, a real bulldog who'd spent years fighting land. Disputes, we drafted a cease and desist. So ironclad it could have doubled as a court summons, forged signatures, illegal zoning, whistleblower emails. You name it, they didn't respond. Not a call, not a letter, just more trucks, more noise, more concrete. Then the HOA's compliance officer tried to find me for my own dam, which had been state permitted for decades. I nearly laughed, but it was a last straw. They posted a notice my dam would be bulldozed Monday, unless I paid up. But the forecast called for rain, and a lot of it. By Saturday, the valley was already soaked, creek rising by the hour. So I did what the land required. I opened the main gate on the dam just enough legally to match the storm inflow like I'd done for years, except this time the creek, blocked downstream by their legal fill, had nowhere to go but straight into the oversaturated slope beneath their cabins. The soil couldn't hold. The cameras rolled all night, and when dawn broke, it looked like a war zone cabins, half buried in mud, foundations shattered. The hillside ripped apart by water they never respected. That's when Cynthia finally showed up, boots sinking into the mess, screaming that I'd sabotaged her project. But as she raged, the local news helicopter circled overhead, and her story of being a victim unraveled fast. My lawyer and I uploaded every document, video, whistleblower, email, and geological report to a public site, sent it to the news, county, feds, everyone. The story went viral. Not a mudslide, but a cover-up. A county inspector afraid of being scapegoated went on record with the truth. Within a week, federal agents were hauling off boxes, and soon after, Cynthia herself, no, more queen, just another white collar, crook and handcuffs. In the end, the HOA was dissolved. The fraud confirmed, the buyers were funded, and I got damages for every scar they left on my land. But what meant more was a letter from A, widow who nearly lost her savings on one of those cabins. She thanked me for saving her husband's legacy, not just my own. After the dust settled, the scars on the ridge were still there. And honestly, it didn't feel like winning. Not at first. But then my neighbors showed up one by one to help me clear the mess. No speeches, just chainsaws and muddy boots and a kind of quiet. That means everything out here. We replanted saplings, cleared debris, and by the time the land started to heal, the whole community knew that real power isn't about paperwork. It's about showing up when it matters. I used the settlement to build an online archive, every deed map and email, so nobody could pull this scam again. The county passed new rules, the Ben Rawlings laws, they call them now. No more quiet filings, no more backroom deals. Every neighbor gets notice every time. This morning I stood on the dam again, coffee in hand, looking at a valley that was finally quiet. The cabins are gone. The creek is running true. If there's a lesson here, it's that you can lie on paper. You can lie in court, but you can't lie to water. And you sure can't lie to a man who knows every corner pin by heart. Now, it's your turn. Tell me, was I right to fight back the way I did? What would you have done if it was your land on the line? Drop a comment, share your story, and let's talk about where justice really comes.